resistance training and bringing you another video. Today's video topic is measurements and how important are measurements in your training program. All right, so let's get into this. But before we do, I want to say this, and that is I have no scientific backing for what I'm about to tell you. I don't have any documentation or any scientific literature. These are just my opinions and my thoughts and beliefs. So please take this with a grain of salt. Nothing here is written in stone. So I just wanted to make that clear from the get-go. So let's get into it. My belief is that measurements are not that important in your training program. And there's a lot of reasons why. And here's what I'm going to tell you. First of all, most people that tell you that they have a 17 or 18-inch arm on YouTube videos or influencers, they're bullshitting you. Now, I'm not saying everyone is, but everyone lies about their measurements. They said that Arnold did it back in the day. Everyone, for some reasons, always, especially their bicep size, that bicep size is all over the place. They said, Arnold said he had 22-inch arms, and they come to find out he actually had 19-inch arms. So it's all over the place. So that's one reason, but that's not the most important reason. The real reason that I really feel strongly about this is that measurements, especially your arms and your biceps, triceps, can change at the drop of a hat. And there's many reasons for this. There's a lot of variables why this happens. And I'll give you a few examples. The type of training you do, okay, plays a big part. Are you doing a high volume, moderate intensity with a lot of repetitions? That plays a big part of it. Your diet, are you on a high carb? Do you eat a lot of carbohydrates to replenish all your glycogen? That'll play a big role. Are you on PEDs? Okay. Are you taking a shitload of creatine? Are you on creatine every day? All these have a big impact on your arm size, but not just your arm size, but all your overall measurements. If you're loading up on a lot of creatine and eating a lot of glycogen, a lot of carbohydrates, and you train, with high volume 4 or 5 days a week, you're gonna look bigger. That's called, and I will say this, that is called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. That is a state of where the muscles are filled up with glycogen, and that glycogen fills the muscle up, making it appear bigger. Okay, you can look that up. It's called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. And this type of hypertrophy makes you look bigger. It swells the muscle up. Anyone will tell you the minute they go on a ketogenic diet or they drop their carbs down like to 50 grams or lower, the first thing you hear every one of these guys will tell you is, I went and did that and I flattened out. Low carb diets tend to make you look really flat. That's why when they go on stages, they have to really calculate when to carb load before they go on. It's called peaking, to fill that muscle up. And that's because if you're on a really low carb diet, you're going to pee a lot of the water out, and your muscles will start to deflate, so to speak. They actually do that. So that is called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, okay? Just so you understand what that is. So all these variables will change at the drop of a hat, okay? So that's my main reasons for saying that, well, don't give measurements, a high priority on your progress. I would rather see you gauge your progress on how strong you're becoming. That's much more important. In my training, it is. Give you an example. If I'm curling 85 pounds for 8 reps, okay, and 6 months later I'm doing 95 pounds for 8 reps, okay, curling 8 reps for 95 pounds, I know that my muscles have actually gotten stronger because they are actually I'm getting 10 pounds on the bar, and I'm doing the same rep range as I did a few months back. You follow? So I'm getting stronger. See, if I wasn't able to do that, that would give me a lot of feedback on what's going on. And as a byproduct, the muscle will get larger. But it won't be just sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. It'll actually be myofibular, which we'll get into in a second. I'll explain that. But you see what I'm saying? So that's a better gauge to go by than measurements. And the thing with measurements also is that you shouldn't be concerned about measurements. I would be doing measurements in your logbook every quarter of the year, every 4 months, and that would give you a good indication. I'm not saying don't measure. I'm not saying they're worthless. So every quarter, write down in your logbook what you measure to get an idea on what's going on. So, all right. So let's move on to the type of training and the types of muscle that you're going to get. All right. So sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is gotten through high volume, high repetition work, and very frequent training. In other words, you're working body parts 2 to 3 times a week, and you're hitting them all the time. And you're eating good. You're eating a lot of carbs to get your glycogen in. This type of training will make you look like a bodybuilder. You will get bigger muscle bellies. Your chest will get bigger, and you'll fill out. Okay, but the problem with this type of training, and this is my belief, and from what I've seen, is that this type of training, once you stop training for even as little as a couple of weeks, you will start to deflate because it's sarcoplasmic, and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy does not stick around very long because it's not actual muscle in itself. It's the illusion of muscle, but it's not actual muscle. You may have gotten a little bit of muscle, don't get me wrong, by that type of training, but you're not getting myofibular hypertrophy. And what that muscle is that's actual muscle fibers being grown in the muscle. That's not just glycogen in there. That's actual real muscle fiber that is actually added to the muscle. And it's a slower process, but it actually makes the muscle bigger. So when you get a bigger muscle through that type of hypertrophy, myofibular, it's going to be a more dense and more harder and a stronger muscle, and it's going to take longer for that muscle to dissipate. So if you obtain that muscle, you can stop training and it will stay around for quite a long time. It's kind of like once you get it, you own it. Okay? So that's the differences. So that type of muscle, myofibular, is gotten through low rep ranges, higher intensities, okay, and very infrequent training. In other words, you hit a muscle and you're working in, to give you an example, like 8 sets of 3s or 6 sets of 4, very heavy weight. We're talking on the 4th rep, you can barely get it up. Intensities of about 85 to 95%, okay? When you work in that range, you're putting a load on the body that the body has to build actual strength. You're building tendon strength. You're building nervous system strength. You're building a different type of muscle and a different type of body overall than the other type of training. That's why these guys, bodybuilders, so to speak, I hate to use these terminologies because then you get into all these power builder, weightlifter, bodybuilder, but the type of training that bodybuilders do, they are seeking this sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. I call it the Michelin I call it the Michelin Man look, okay? So with that type of training, you're going to have the appearance of a bodybuilding physique. Now, me personally, I train for a much denser look and more strength orientated look. And that's going to be able to be achieved without being and living in the gym, okay? These guys that have that particular look and this sarcoplasmic, they have to train very frequently, 4 to 5 to 6 days a week, and they have to it's called like maintenance. They have to maintain this muscle, where if you achieve the strength part of it, the myofibular part, that muscle tends to stick around a long time. In other words, if you reach a 250 bench and you got there through this type of training, you will probably always be able to lift the 250 even 6 months down the road, because you kind of own that. You own that muscle. It's yours. So this is my belief again. This is just what I believe. And I've witnessed it. Have you ever seen, I've gone to many different gyms, and the guys that are more powerlifting orientated, okay, granted, they carry a little bit more fat than bodybuilders because their priority is not to step on stage, but they have a certain look about them that's more dense. The muscle looks more dense. It doesn't have that balloon look to it, okay? And I will give you, I was listening to a video with Marty Gallagher. He was a trainer, a powerlifting coach, Matt, back in the day. You can look him up, Marty Gallagher. And he wrote for Muscle and Fitness, I believe. He was writing for a lot of muscle mags back in the day. And he said something that really stuck with me. And he said that when Franco Columbu, you could be standing next to Franco Columbu and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And if you looked at Arnold and you looked at Franco, looking at Franco Columbu in person, he looked like granite. You know, the guy would be standing there and he would just look awesome. And you would look at Arnold, and Arnold would just look like a regular dude. He was big, of course, but then he said this, it really struck out. But when Arnold did the flexing, he popped. Everything popped, and Marty said it just blew his mind by seeing that, because he had the control and the contraction of all the muscles, and he made those pop because those muscles are balloons. It was like he's a balloon. See what I'm saying? And that always just stayed right here with me, because it makes sense. You know, you see a person that's really, really dense, they can't make their muscles pop because they're just dense. They don't have that glycogen loaded up in those muscles. Okay, and again, this is just my thoughts on it. And I've seen a lot of guys, they just look like granite, where these other guys look like a Michelin Man. You can tell, if you really look closely, you can see it in their muscles. Okay, so I train for myofibular hypertrophy, and this type of training is lower rep ranges. I go to 8, and that's about it. I don't very rarely go more than 8 repetitions, and my intensities are high, but my training is very infrequent. Now, the reason I want to talk about infrequency here a little bit. One of the reasons that I believe personally that infrequent training is such a powerful tool is that infrequent training lets you recuperate, lets you go with high intensities when you do train. For example, when I train, I am training. There's no BSing around there. I put in an hour and a half, and oh buddy, you're there. I will put a 20-year-old, 30-year-olds, and I will put them into the ground, you know, just by working with me. And sure, I may not be lifting as much weight as they do, but pound for pound, I will put them into the ground with this type of training that I do. If they do follow what I do, you know, 85, 90% of your 1 rep max, sets of 6 for 4 or sets of 8 for 3. That type of training will just, it's hard on the nervous system. It's hard on the joints, but at the same time, when you facilitate the rest periods and give yourself enough ample rest before doing that particular body part again, you will have incredible results. And that's what I believe, and that's what I believe, and I believe it to be true because I do it. That's what I do. I have some pretty good numbers. Like again, I'm 67 years old and I weigh 165. Right now I'm at 165 and I'm 5'9.5". Okay, so I can move some weight for where I'm at this point in my life. I'm doing pretty good. Okay, so this is why I believe that infrequent training, higher intensities, okay, will add good quality muscles. Now I want to end this. I'm going to end this video with this point here. It's very important that you understand this because I don't want to lead you astray. What I mean with higher intensity and lower reps, I don't want you to get the idea that this is some type of Mike Mensker or Dorian Yates type training. Although it is pretty close to Dorian Yates, you know, Dorian Yates, he's not this one set to failure and that's it and you leave the gym. Dorian actually did 5 or 6 sets of each exercise and then he had a top set. Dorian Yates, by the way, trained very similar to body or powerlifting type training, you know. He trained almost identical to Ed Coan. If you look at Ed Coan's training and you look at Dorian Yates, they're very similar. If you look at you look up their programs, their training programs, it's almost pretty similar. They always did 4 or 5 sets and then boom, they did a top set. So that's the type of training I do. But I'm not this HIIT. I'm not this, you do a little warm-up and then you do all out one set and then that's it. That's not going to work. I just want to make that clear. That type of training is not going to work. I believe in high volume. Okay, I actually do higher volume. I can do up as much as 8 sets in a given exercise. Okay, and then I cycle through. I'll work in rep ranges of like 6 sets of 3 or 8 sets of 4. I'm all over the place, okay? But it's all about getting intensity. And then if I go on a like 2 or 3 weeks down the road, if I feel myself hurting, then I lighten up a little bit and I go to the 8. You know, I do like 4 or 5 sets of 8 reps. You know. And then just keep going until I can't. On the last set, maybe I'm getting 6 or 5. See what I'm saying? So I move it around, okay? It's not always going to be balls to the wall. You got to cycle it a little bit. So I just wanted to make that really clear. And to get into all the aspects of how I train and what I'm doing, it would take hours and hours of video. I just don't have time for it here. But I just wanted to make this video. I had a previous one. I had to delete it because I tried to edit it and I messed it up and I had to delete it. I apologize for that. So I remade this video to make things a little bit more clear. Measurements are important, but only to you. And don't go by so much by the measurement. You should go by how you're progressing in your lifts, okay? And I know I'm going to hear a lot of, well, I'm a bodybuilder and I'm not interested in strength, but believe me, the strength and the size are all correlated into one. They're the same thing. Don't believe this BS on they're different and you got to train differently. The only thing that they train for is loading up glycogen in their body. Remember that. It's not actual muscle. And there is an influencer, I'm not going to say his name, but he said it very plainly. He said that he used to be power lifting and he was real strong. I think he could do 225 for 20 or 22 reps. or something like that. And then he switched to hypertrophy training. He got out of that. And the first thing he said when he was into this type of training for 2 or 3 months, that he went back to the bench and he could not bench what he was doing when he was powerlifting. So he actually lost strength, but he said, I don't care because I actually got bigger. But the illusion there is, what he's not seeing clearly is, yes, he may have gotten bigger and it may look cool, but he's actually lost myofibrillar muscle because he's not as strong as he was. If he would have gotten as strong as possible and did the training where he cycled back and forth with a little sarcoplasmic and then switched back to more strength training he would have still kept his strength and still keep the size as much as possible. So this is a really, really technical science, and it gets real technical, and we're all different. But I'm telling you, this is why I made this video. I wanted to make it clear to you that strength and strength is just as important for size as training for sarcoplasmic hypertrophy as bodybuilding. They're not different. They're the same. That's why throw the tape measure away and focus on judging your strength. If you're curling 85 pounds for 8, 6 months later, if you're curling 95 pounds for 8, you have gotten bigger muscle. End of story. I don't care what anyone says. Even if that muscle is only measuring the same measurement, but you've only gained 1/8 of an inch. That may be only 1/8 of an inch, but it's a bigger muscle. The problem with myofibrillar hypertrophy is it's a much slower process to get the muscle larger than sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. All right, I hope I made myself clearer, and I hope you understand. And remember, train for strength, and size will come to you. We're out of here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe. It'll help me out. And I'll try to get these videos out as much as I can, but I'm real busy, so it's going to be a while. I got a lot of projects around here, so thanks for watching and take care. Let's find this, where is this thing here? All right, thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.